Hello folks, and good morning. Welcome to a guide here, attempting to cover a lot of late game and I guess technically total game ideas for Tactics Ogre Reborn, kind of advanced building concepts, all that kind of thing, and hopefully help explain some of the cool synergies that you can do in, as you're getting on. So, first and foremost, I want to deal with a couple of, I guess you could call them mind goblins here, right? This is a game that, especially starting in PSP, has always kind of had this thing of just, as soon as you find your favorites, there's always this immediate tunnel vision that happens. I'm just like, I found a thing that I like, therefore I need to only min-max this and get rid of everything else. Now, in PSP, this idea, generally speaking, worked, because a lot of things worked off of ranks and things like that, which meant that eventually, if you ended up grinding up those ranks, pretty much anything could be absolutely broken. And what's funny is that this time around, this is still technically kind of true, but it's more along the lines of things will activate when you're using them properly. What I'm trying to get at here is usually that mindset, that kind of SRPG mindset that's been instilled in a lot of us to go and grind and grind and grind is, well, frankly, unnecessary, because a lot of your units are a lot more powerful than you may realize right from the get-go. It's just a matter of using them in the right place. And usually the thought process goes something along the lines of like, well, okay, I get to the end game, and now all of a sudden melee stuff is useless, and now I need to go use only range stuff, but oh, range attacks are useless, so I need to go use only magic, and I can only use summons, and oh, well, I guess we're just gonna ignore the fact that summons have half the range of the missiles or something like that. It's okay, missiles are also useless, overheads are useless, debuffs are useless, it's only summons. Summons are the only thing that we need to focus on, we only need intelligence in mind, we only throw all those stats on one particular unit, and that's the only way to do anything. And it's that tunnel vision of like, you find that little breakthrough, and now let's go and exploit that breakthrough for everything else. When in reality, there's a lot of other choices that might be making the entire situation a lot easier. But anyway, let's get into some ideas here. Main reason that I'm covering this is a little while ago, I started doing speedrun files and stuff like that, and especially was covering things like a no grind file here, which many took to understand as a, well, that sounds like a challenge run. It's really not. Actually, I would honestly kind of recommend giving it a try, because this whole idea that you need to grind your stats to accomplish anything is missing a very important detail here, which is that while technically stats affect everything, the most important stuff in this game is going to be the stuff that's based off of a percentage. And if, for example, you're looking at your stats, 30% of your strength and dex combined for a melee attack that's being used effectively is going to matter a lot more than, grinding for several hours. Now, obviously, this is going to scale up as the game goes on, but honestly, the stats that you get as a baseline are going to be powerful enough to get you through whatever challenges you run through. I know oftentimes it seems like a scary thing when you've got your characters up in the 300s and stuff like that, and it's like, oh, I can't imagine how bad this would be with 100 less stats. It's not that bad. Give it a try sometime. Anyway, so let's go ahead and talk about some interesting synergies that you could be doing, some interesting class building stuff that you could be doing, because a lot of the post-game and late game and all of that kind of thing comes with the idea of flipping things that you've already been using on their head in interesting ways. Just going and trying to combine things, like let's say we look at the usual FFT mindset of just how many skills can I slap on this unit. I can slap so many Hamitos up in this bad boy kind of thing, and look at it more from a perspective of this. This whole thing is your team. All of the skills of all of these units combined, that is your team. These are all of your puzzle pieces. These are all the tools in your tool belt. It's not my one unit is strong, because the point to get one unit strong enough to actually be able to legitimately solo a map or something is a lot farther down the line than it looks, but it's also a lot easier to achieve with skills than stats than it looks. I know that seems, again, like contradictory information. This game's weird, just roll with it. Anyway, so let's get on with it here. Actually, one last little housekeeping note to bring up here. In terms of levels, okay? In terms of levels, there's going to be a lot of cases where stuff will technically be over-leveled and stuff like that. So this may seem scary at times when you're going into a map and it's like, well, it's bullshit, I'm capped at 40, this guy's at 55. Your power does not come from your power level, especially if you've gone through any of the New Game Plus type stuff. You know how you're breezing through like it was absolutely nothing? That's because your skill ranks and stuff like that have a lot more to say in this particular equation than you may potentially be thinking. And again, in a lot of cases, the wider access to different tools that you have, the more options you have to deal with stuff effectively. Like, let's break it down like this. And actually, this is probably the first thing that I noticed a lot of folks struggling with. Actually, two notes that I see folks struggling with a lot. A, it's not neutral damage doesn't matter that much. That seems like a bit of a weird thing to say, but you see all these colorful bars? If you don't have the colorful bars, hit your right stick 2 times to turn on elemental bars. These are, again, a 30% advantage in the case of physical, and in the case of magical stuff, it's going to be 10%. We're going to try to avoid getting into the nitty-gritty of numbers too much, but many folks, and don't worry if you miss this, don't appreciate the full extent to how much elements are actually affecting you by this point, and really have been throughout the entire game. Like, if you ever saw that disagreement between two people, like where one person was saying archers were useful and the other one was saying they were useless trash, that's because they weren't using elements. If you're using elements and you're going and targeting on weaknesses, archers are freaking awesome. But if you're using, if you're basically just trying to brute force your way through, it would be a lot more difficult, because they're essentially abusing that 30% bonus to get past defenses to scale a lot harder. They get yet another housekeeping note on the housekeeping note. When I say archers scale harder, technically speaking, it's more accurate to say they have a higher entry point. It's not necessarily that they scale too much harder in the long run, but it's more like they have a big spike as soon as they get past thresholds. Again, weird detail that's not going to help you very much, but just because I know it's going to come up in the comments. Anyway, so let's break down this fight right here. First and foremost, do we need to know exactly what every unit is carrying and exactly what every unit is doing? No. We can break it down into 2 main categories that we need to focus on when we're breaking down a fight. How do I kill that? How do I stop that? Alright? Essentially break down the units into 3 different categories. You got your squishies. These are the stuff that's going to die very easily to arrows without any kind of special prep. You got your normals, which are going to be your basic soldiers, basic infantry, your grunts, the bulk of the army. And then you've got your heavies, which is going to be anything with a big health bar. Now, it doesn't matter what that heavy is, because there are no heavies that run poison-proof, or death-proof, rather. Even if they resist poison, frankly, you can still end up poisoning them all the same. Resistance is really only going to apply against stuff like Poison Cloud and Poison Rain. Poison Arrows really do not care. Anyway, so the reason that these health bars don't matter is because this is the first step of appreciating the end game here. You use their big health bars against them. Like, if you were to go and poison this unit, it wouldn't seem terribly impressive. They're doing about roughly 122 damage per tick when poison's happening. It's useful, but it's not, it's not going to be the biggest deal in the world. Meanwhile, I see a lot of folks going down that rabbit hole of, I need to make my summons big enough to kill the big heavy thing before it arrives, whereas this thing could be bleeding out for 356 damage every time that, poison's rolling around and ticking, which again is going to be in the ballpark of 2 to 3 ticks per turn. Depending on how much you slow them down, you can get that up to 4, but either way, there's a lot of things like that. Alright, so that is an important distinction to make, that yes, if they have a high health bar, don't even bother fighting those. The heavies, you poison, you walk away, you disable them. Now, let's go ahead and talk about how we disable them. So we're going to go ahead and pop out of here because I like the other menu a little bit more. But let's go ahead and talk about it this way. So, you need to be thinking about your team at this point, not in terms of how much power can I get out of this one unit, but how can they support each other. For example, let's discuss our problem right there. We have multiple units that we can deal with in whatever way we'd like. We already have ranged units to deal with those squishies, but now we have to be able to survive those heavies, right? We need to be able to control that situation. So, what do? Well, we go ahead and we see, okay, if we completely bypass the fact that they can, even if they resist poison, we can still bypass this with Envenom, so we have a guaranteed poison. In this case, I like running her with a blowgun, and by the way, there is no secret meta behind this stuff down here. I just personally like the way that this looks with these 2 stacked up on top of another, and also Venom Sting allows you to manually apply poison in cases where Envenom doesn't roll. So, we have 2 layers to this. 1 is going to be a redundancy for what your goal is going to be, and 2 is to try to figure out different ways you can apply that redundancy. Like, her first kind of plan A here is if thing has a big health bar, poisoning. So, Envenom, so that would be the main goal. But, let's say there's cases later on where, for whatever reason, Benum has decided to be the main one that rolls, and Venom decided not to roll. She still keeps some MP on hand in order to be able to still apply poison from Venom Sting in that particular situation. So she's still going to be applying that roll one way or another, and for all the rest of the time, she's essentially saving MP by using the spell slots on the sword to go cast Ice Blast instead. So instead of strictly focusing on trying to go for damage all the time, she is only focusing on poison and her finishers. All right, she's using free spells exclusively, and then using all that MP on stuff like this. So her whole purpose is to fly around and tank with Steel Stance, essentially trying to pick up some cards to make sure that her Venom is going to be guaranteed, as well as her armor skill over here. And then she's realistically only looking to poison and poison some more, right? The other stuff, it may come in handy every now and then if needed. Stuff like, for example, Advent Sign. If she finds herself on top of a wall and there's a unit on the bottom of it, she can essentially use Advent Sign to hit on the bottom of the wall, because anything with an AoE can also target downwards. So this is actually pretty handy in Palace of the Dead. But don't get too focused on specifics. Everything is just another tool in your tool belt, okay? So anyway, she has to land her poison, but that's just one unit with her redundancies. We need to make sure that she can actually get there, right? So in order to make sure that her poison has a chance to function, we need to make sure that that unit is disabled. So how do we go about that? Well, we have a few ways that we're going to go about that. We can have something like a Terranite or a Spellcaster here, going for something like Drain Mind in order to make sure that they don't get the MP required, in order to make sure that that they're stuck using basic melee attacks, right? So we're looking at this from a purpose of, okay, we want to just keep their MP suppressed, but that may not necessarily be enough. We want to make sure to slow them down further, so another backup plan. So we go ahead and we look at our Juggernaut. It's like, okay, we already have a way to reduce MP, but that unit is still moving. So we'll apply a couple of redundant plans to this as well. We've got Threaten over here to, again, get rid of more of their MP, as well as inflict silence in case this is one of those that's able to actually go and cast things. And then we've got Check in order to make sure that it'll stop. So you might be saying, wait a minute, hold on, that's stupid, you're an idiot. Why exactly would you go for something like this? That's only going to trigger at the start of your turn. Correct. We're going to need that in just a second. Bear with me. Second redundancy on this is we can go ahead and bring along our Juggernaut, and or our Beast Tamer is actually the one that we're going to focus on for this one. So we look at our Beast Tamer, and it's like, okay, we saw that there was a dragon in there. We saw that there was a chance for a beast to spawn in there. So we're just going to go ahead and put Tame on there. We're going to go ahead and put our Repel Dragon. So we're going to have him go up to the dragon. He's hopefully going to roll this skill and be immune to that dragon, whatever it decides to do, and he's going to rely on other units to weaken it so that he can tame it. We are breaking the unit cap to, again, take another one of their advantages off the board. At the same time, he's going to be attempting to stun anything nearby with a stunning shortbow. Now we go back to that previous thing of what happens with that Juggernaut. Their skill only triggers at the start of their turn. That's such a weakness, but is it though? Because by this point we've got a Lord. And we look at the Lord, and it's like, well, he can use Conserve MP, he can use Paradigm Shift. So essentially, we now have total control over when and where we want our auto skills to be landing. Okay, so we use our MP for going and making sure that happens. We use our Meditate to charge up in the background, use our Phalanx to stay totally safe, and at the same time, while other units are actually doing the attacking, he's going to be focusing on getting that Golem over to our side, right? So now, let's go ahead and reevaluate our situation here. Because we are, let's go ahead and see here. I'm about 99% sure this guy isn't running Deathproof or what have you, because he's just a basic Phoenix, right? So now this unit that was, complete bullshit before, is now a far more manageable situation. He's going to be aggressive. He's going to be going for something in the front, right? So we go ahead and we set up our ninja over here, and we already know that we have one ice unit that's going to be available. We're going to take Flapjack off this team here. So we can basically guarantee that, like, if we're looking at his movement, we can see that he's going to, if we can go ahead and, it's not going to show us the movement here, but roughly speaking, he's going to be around here. So we move our ninja around in this direction. He is going to attack in that direction. We are going to go and make sure that he has no MP with which to attack. We're going to go make sure that he's stopped, that he's silenced, so he's not casting anything, he's not attacking anything. And we are going to make sure that he's poisoned, so he's bleeding away. So now he's going to go ahead and be locked down. And we can just simply keep him locked down with Salad Snake here. However, again, this guy will be attempting to go for a Leaden to make sure that guy can't fly away. We're going to make sure that we're going to repeatedly trigger that stop, going and abusing our Paradigm Shift over here. Essentially, we're using everyone's skills in tandem to take this thing that would have been a threat in a 1v1 scenario and rendering it completely harmless, right? So while we have all of the other, like, let's say, casters and stuff going and dealing with their own stuff, we have the Beast Tamer attempting to go recruit this unit. We have Denim going and attempting to recruit this unit, which is going to be pretty likely to succeed. Not to mention he can actually go for the one up here as well. So that's going to be 3 pieces that they no longer have that we do. Additionally, with these guys, all we got to do is trap them in a single area. So we can go ahead and use Elrig over here. We just move Captain Elrig over here and just have him block off this tile. And simply put, that's all he really needs to do. He just needs to be blocking right here. So we'll put probably a Rampart and a Phalanx on him, and that'll do the job well enough. Additionally, if more zombies had spawned, we could go for a for something like a Sanctuary and a Rampart, but either way, that'll do for now. So we've now got answers to most of the big threats on this map. We're going to be running away from it with additional units, which means that basically it's going to come down to a 5v15, give or take, by the end of the fight, right? Actually, no, there's more of them back there, so it's going to be roughly in the ballpark of a 6v15 by the end of the fight, right? Actually, I'm not counting the skeleton. Whatever. Okay, 7 versus 15 by the end of it. This fight, though, would have been otherwise a threat, because we're breaking down how we can quickly deal with the biggest threats first. It comes down from, hey, let's take pieces off the board just by doing damage, comes down to, let's get rid of the biggest threat first, disable as many units as possible, and then just sweep up the rest. Now, I know that sounds a bit more on the complicated side, but by figuring out these little combinations between all of your units, you're going to have a far faster time going and clearing maps. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve at first, but it's something to bear in mind. Like, one of those things that tends to come up to the comments to this day here are going to be things like archers, like, oh, haha, they don't do damage, which they do. When it comes to our archers, their whole shtick is, again, once you hit on a weakness, they're going to hit dramatically more. So for context, like right here, this thing isn't even upgraded, it just sort of showed up like this, but 19% physical damage and 11% extra versus beasts. Okay, that is significant, and not to mention because he's an archer, he could, go, for example, go for something along the lines of applying double shot and tremendous shot, potentially apply that on an engulf, and now, essentially, he's going to be, well, a Dragoon that doesn't need to Dragoon. Now he's going to be able to quadruple his already insanely high scaling damage versus this thing. Now, do I have any guarantee that he's going to be able to do much of anything versus this particular unit? Not necessarily. But, just so you know, that is an option. They do end up going pretty darn wacky. So, what we're going to do, since we have a couple of extra slots, is kind of expand our options here a little bit. And let's see, do I actually have time to go through the whole process here? Maybe. Well, hopefully it'll be enough time. So, looking at it this way, we need to apply poison from 2 different sources. So, I know that Sistina's going to be able to do the job, but we're not going to put the whole job on her, so we're going to put Big Melty back here, using a Dragon Eye and his Poison Breath. Later on, we're actually going to put a Flight Ring on him, just because it'll be extra funny, in order to make sure the poison gets applied, okay? Now, your answers don't always have to be poison. Obviously, there's a lot of different debuffs and things available, but to give you further ideas of the kinds of interesting stuff you could be combining, like right here you might notice I have Elrig running Sanctuary, which actually for the purpose of this thing we're going to go ahead and replace him with a Golem. Where's Mr. Morpheus? There we go. So one of my favorite combos going through POTD was something like this, where we've got a Flying Golem, because again, oftentimes it gets misremembered. Like, okay, this is a weird one of those Mind Goblin situations where people will get into the end game, declare everything but summoners useless, and then just, like, never consider the options of accessories and stuff like that on monster units. It's like, those same items that have been making your other units awesome can be applied to everybody. Just remember, I don't know if you were here months ago, but months ago I did a video that basically said it's not your unit that's overpowered, it's you. You decide what's overpowered. You decide what to make overpowered. It's just a matter of paying attention. So, right here we have a Golem that is going to fly. He's running Rampart Aura, Gorge and Lock, Broaden Force, and Rampart Shadow. He's entirely here for area control. So, immediately upon this fight starting, his goal is simply to walk forward. He will now hold all units right here. Golems are fantastic for this because they have more area control than anything else. So, actually, this actually brings me to the next thing. Just a quick note on Rampart Aura. If you're using it just like, if you have your front line here and then you're just going and putting the guy right in front, that's not what Rampart Aura is for. Like, that'll delay stuff from coming in and it'll prevent them from passing through, but the main purpose of Rampart Aura is to just, like, throw them way the hell downfield and keep, you know, like half to potentially 3/4 of the team locked away in an area that they can't get through. Just essentially pulling back and keep doing these delaying actions, keeping that entire team in check, you know? So like in this particular situation, right, if we were to move him forward, so let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, let's say 5-ish. So we put him around here, he's going to stop these guys from moving forward once his first turn rolls around. Second turn, we can go ahead and throw him in this direction, and then we can also throw down a rampant aura down in this direction, provided that he's got enough points, right? Rampant aura is pretty expensive, but if you're running it exclusively, it's actually not that bad. Anyway, like typically I'll find that he can put one down about every 3-4 rounds. But what we do is, again, we're just looking to keep as many units out of the fight as possible. By parking him up here, he can go and lock away 4 units from even entering the fight. And because they've got really, really wide side axis, depending on the way that you angle them, the purpose of that rampart aura is to give you a sort of V shape. So like if he landed right here, he would be blocking several tiles this way, but then he could put another one right here that would block several more this way. The only thing that can get around that is going to be flyers, just so you know. Alright, so let's go ahead and put that away for the moment. And now we want options to go deal with the rest. I know that there's ghosts, so I'm going to want exorcisms. And rather than focusing on exorcism directly, this is part of the reason that I like to put exorcism staffs on units that otherwise wouldn't be doing things or just need a turn to recover. Instead, I'm just going to go and use Starfall over here on him, so that'll do the job well enough. Yes, I know the whole thing on the Sage staff, don't care, I just want it on there. For support, I'm going to be using the Familiar here, which I didn't mention the Golem and Knight thing, did I? Okay, Golem and Knight, why would you use them right next to each other? These guys have a whole lot of Rampart Aura, and then at the same time you can go and apply something like a Knight right next to them, and put Sanctuary on that Knight, right? So now you have a situation where the Knight is going to be preventing any undead units from even getting close. Rampart Aura prevents them from going around, and they are simply stuck. So you have an entire category of units that just simply won't be able to engage. Meanwhile, you're blocking off all the rest from ever entering the fight. They're there to delay, they're there to give you time to blender the rest of those units using what you got on hand here, right? Okay. So we saw that they have a Griffin, so we're going to go ahead and set up for Griffin. I could probably go and probably go and get rid of Lobber in this particular instance. It is a very, very good ability, but might be more useful to have him, I don't know, doing something a bit more along the lines of, let's say, probably empowering that Griffin. That might be potentially handy. Okay, so we put him over here. And now we know we're going to have a lot of normal units, so we've got something like a Familiar over here, doing the old thing of, well, you got free Charm over here from this Blow Dart, you got some free Tornado casts, and oftentimes I see this over-focus of trying to min-max for your particular casting tools or what have you. It's not really, you know, it's not really necessary, just so you know, it's free. I mean, free is free, it's got its own value. I was running a Sanctuary on him a little bit ago because having something like a Familiar block off an entire area from undead units is very handy. Anyway, in this particular case, I'm just going to go ahead and probably put Pumpkin Strike on there. So he's going to be applying his weapon damage for a physical attack kind of deal there. I'm going to move you here, going to move you here. Cockatrice is going to go and Petrify. The goal, ideally, is to see Meditate roll, essentially spell charge into the Cockatrice, who then petrifies units in the back row, hopefully delaying them from entering the fight, allowing more time for the Golem to get into position. And then from there, again, you know, Beast Tamer goes to take the Griffin as a friend. We've got two different sources. We're going to go ahead and say probably take off Empower Golem, put on Control Golem. So we're going to have two different sources of attempting to get that Golem on our team because he is closer. I would expect that one Griffin Tamer would probably be enough, so we'll leave that there. We've got one Summoner and Debuff user over here, which, by the way, the reason that you'll regularly see something like Poison and Thunderbird on these teams together, multiple reasons. For one thing, at the start of your fight, you might as well throw Poison out there. It's already going to be free on a Dragon Dagger. It's going to have longer range than your summons. Range, it's funny, is another one of those things that tends to get advertised as being everything, and then just completely overlooked in other cases where it counts. Like, there's always that tunnel vision for summons. There's a reason that there was when there was that big, as I like to call it, the shaman cult several months ago, I kept trying to steer folks away from that, because getting stuck on one thing just leads to frustrations when you can't deal with stuff using that one thing. This is the same thing that we had with archers. Like, the same thing that you see right now of, oh, meditate is bullshit, it didn't roll, it's so useless, I can't believe that somebody would design a game like this. That is the exact same thing that we heard from like, oh no, my archers can't one-shot things because something put up evade, or it ended up deflecting, oh no, back in the PSP version. This is nothing new. It's always, somebody finds the powerful thing, and then focuses on that exclusively. They run into a situation where it has a problem, and they declare it RNG bullshit. Redundancy is the key to consistency. Alright, anyway. So, moving on here, yeah, her whole purpose is to melt stuff at a distance, and it's not about the damage. When you're talking about cases where you're dealing with a whole lot of units at once, it's not strictly about the damage. Poison is there to make sure that stuff is softened up before the fight ever starts, and to make big health bars go away. Alright, it's got long range, it's got damage potentially outstripping that of most summon type of situations, again, depending on the situation, but it's going to have dramatically longer range than many other things. Something like the Lord could be seen as a damage powerhouse, but at the same time, they could also be seen as the guy that runs all the Wall Street spells. Just give him just all the expensive stuff and conserve MP your way through it. Something like the Swordmaster, that's actually where the TK and the kind of TK MP suppression idea came from earlier. So I was talking about how you can use the TK for using Drain Mind to go and suppress something's MP, right? So you use that on a boss. Like, let's say you put a Swordmaster next to a boss. That Swordmaster would probably lose to the boss, but you have them pick up a skill card on their way, you have them break some props to go pick up a skill card. Anyway, you go ahead and apply all of that. And so you have them go stand next to this boss. At the same time, you have the TK using their higher armor to make sure that they're not getting targeted by as much random stuff while sitting out there in the front. So they're kind of in this awkward little gap between where the ranged units don't want to attack them, but the melee units are out of range. Anyway, you give them some high resistance gear in order to help deal with any elemental weaknesses or what have you, but they're dark, so they probably won't be taking any kind of smaller damage spikes. Anyway, you go ahead and abuse all of this to guarantee that a boss will be doing a melee attack, and then you just simply use a combination of Preempt and Mind's Eye to take this unit that would have been an otherwise, insta-kill level threat into, hey, it's 2 free attacks, 2 free attacks, and we just completely mitigated their damage. Something like taking a high mind class like a cleric, like Olivia was here, and switching them over to Swordmaster is a very solid idea, because something like a Bedeviling or Comely Dance is going to either mass breach or mass slow very effectively in their hands. Again, mind is practically their highest stat at this point, so it just leads to a very very cozy situation as far as that goes. Anyway, let's go ahead and continue on here as far as other interesting synergies that you might be overlooking. Bear in mind, I won't be able to cover them all. Obviously, there's way too many combos, but the idea is just pay attention to the cool stuff that stuff can do, and you'll end up seeing a lot of things they may have otherwise completely missed. And you may potentially see a lot more effective combos. Like, again, usually the answer is how to, like, if the unit needs to die, if there's a bunch of units that need to be taken out, a lot of folks will settle on the answer of how do I make the summons stronger instead of how do I break their defenses and just kill it off with a longbow or something like that. So, say hello to Ramrod here. This is currently one of my favorite units that, again, is currently waiting for a flight ring to show up. But I like this combination right here. So we're gonna go ahead and assume that he's got the flight ring on him right now. Again, I have it on the golem, but you've got Scale, you've got Dash, you've got Dragon's Eye, you've got Acid Breath. Acid Breath causes breach, which basically means that this guy is using his Dragon's Eye to guarantee the debuff, using Dash to move ridiculously far, and using Scale to make sure that he's perfectly safe when he gets there. Obviously, you pretty much want to focus on skill cards. You might notice I have a lot of characters that are going to be running a lot of auto skills. Why? Because they are very easy to manipulate. It's very easy for somebody to come in and say, oh, it's RNG, it's not fair. Well, make the RNG yours. Control it. Skill cards are the most common thing. Breaking props causes, well, a card to spawn. And there's a more, I think somebody looked it up, it was like 35% something chance, compared with like, I think it was like 15 or 25 or whatever for the rest of the cards or some such. Anyway, point being, skill cards are dramatically the most common card that is going to spawn on the field, meaning that auto skills are basically capable of being turned to 100% within a few rounds of every map, okay? But it obviously depends on where you want to allocate those resources. But in this particular case, again, plus 3 movement, going to be reducing damage by 70% and reflecting damage, and going to be applying debuffs with a guaranteed chance, and then Acid Breath for, obviously Acid Breath. In fact, it's potentially very handy to go and use something like a Glass Pumpkin, since you start getting these like frickin' candy at this point, to charge up before the fight even starts, and then just have them kind of air raid breaching everything, right? So you apply something like that, and then you look over at your, again, high-scaling units, like your archers over here, and it's like, oh, wait, depending on the situation, that's going to be 15% physical, plus 30%, if he's attacking a lightning unit, or if he's attacking a water unit, 12% from this bow, or another 30% from Flaming Blast, if you were to apply that. Hopefully you can kind of see the combination there. These guys get past defense, they get their big damage spike. You can actually see it on the menu at any given time, whereas, for example, if we were to look at Olivia here, it would show the damage prediction if nothing else were to be affecting this as 690, whereas in his particular case, it would be 924. Now, this doesn't tell the full story. This is just a rough estimate based off only physical stuff and no other modifiers. And this is a max hit that is honestly impossible to actually achieve, because all of them will be, again, maximum before defense and without any other... There's a lot of steps to the calculation. Just don't worry about trying to figure out the numbers. There's a reason I regularly say, hey, just don't look at the numbers. It's fine. Anyway, so let's go ahead and talk about that grind thing really quick. Just so you know, one of the downsides of grinding that doesn't get to get brought up very often, it's kind of twofold. I used to call this the Ozma problem back in PSP because that was typically something you saw more with her. But one thing, it tends to lead to overconfidence on a small handful of units. Now, no matter what you're doing, unless you're going and stacking insane amounts of vitality, that unit will still be killable. Like, unless we're talking something like a knight or a golem or whatever else that you're dumping all these stats onto, they're still going to be very mortal, meaning that if they get surrounded, they're going to get the hell beat out of them. This is where I usually make that joke of birds eat wizards. Like, especially stuff like griffins will just surround and batter the crap out of them. Even if they end up putting on items that will resist it, this is still going to potentially lead to a lot of problems once they start spamming skills that can get around those resistances and stuff like that. Point being, overconfidence on one particular unit leads to the situation where once that unit is down by one means or another, you don't have a backup plan. All of your eggs were in that one basket. Not to mention, let's say if you end up boosting the defenses of one particular unit over everybody else, you might lead to that situation where maybe you get to the point where that unit isn't getting attacked, you're keeping them safe. Suddenly everybody else doesn't have the option to switch out that aggro in a different direction. This isn't an all-the-time situation, but it is something that can happen, just so you know. It's, again, I used to call it the Ozma problem simply because it's something that people were running into all the time with that game, where they're like, just 2 ice swords on Ozma, she's gonna carve through everything, she's so overpowered, and then she ends up getting, frickin' steamrolled by some random hoplite or something. And then that's where the, the cries of bullshit end up starting, because now all of a sudden all those eggs were in that one basket, and that problem's dealt with. This unit suddenly is, dead because of overconfidence, so to speak. But again, this is just more of a general rule. Obviously, there's a lot of specifics. I know, you have your specific way of getting around it. I'm just saying that is a kind of generalized warning for a lot of those kinds of situations. Another thing, in terms of magic recovery, this is actually something that we're going to go ahead and start the fight to show. But when it comes to MP recovery, many don't realize that attacking and getting hit is going to charge up your MP. The thing's basically an overdrive bar, as it were, right? So, in this particular instance, this means that there's a lot of cases where seemingly dumb actions may actually help you out quite a bit. Like, for example, going and intentionally taking a counterattack. So if I were to, let's say, go forward, and I want to make sure that this unit over here was getting some extra MP, what I might want to do is go over here and intentionally take that 88 damage. As the saying goes, the only health point that matters is the last one. So if you can use your health bar offensively in order to make sure that you're getting additional points out of this, it's worth doing. Like, he's going to do a little bit of damage to that thing, he's going to take some in return, but still, he's gone and generated some MP here, right? they're going and generating a little bit more. And this is a nice way to go and essentially set up earlier on in the fight. It's not much this early, but it is something that can help out, more and more as time goes on. It's something that may be just the difference between, starting off really weak and potentially getting a nice big push once everything gets going here. Okay. So we're going to have her start heading in this direction as you do. Actually, she's going to be a couple of spots out of range here. We're just going to go this way. And this is what makes a lot of these free cast type of things very useful. It just allows you to get some setup going, potentially weaken up some units before anything really gets going properly. So we'll go ahead and paradigm shift, see if we can get you set up in position a little bit better. Worth a shot. But again, the nice thing about Conserve MP Paradigm Shift is just you can re-roll that as you need to. It's a very handy potential thing there. Probably should have started Rudlum in a different spot. We're still kind of early on here, so these are, again, units that have not taken any stat charms. They haven't done any grinding, what have you. These are just basic whatever kind of units. And again, that mentality of, I need to go do 1v1 duels with the other guy, that's just going to hurt you in the long run. Like, realistically, while you can eventually get to that point, it doesn't necessarily help you that much. Another note on debuffs, by the way. You're not always going to be able to hit, and this doesn't mean that you're never going to be able to hit. So, when you're looking at debuffs, it's going to be a case where every map is going to be different in terms of who's got what. So in this particular case, for example, the previous map had very similar units, but there were several that had weaknesses in their resistance, which meant that that charm would have been a bit more useful. In this case, it's not really happening, and that's perfectly fine. Stuff can be like that sometimes. Alright, so right here, want MP. I want to see if we can get this guy on the team, but instead he ended up attacking, which is fine. Both scenarios end up working out just great, and we end up moving on. Okay, now we want to make sure that some bars are melting, so let's see what we can go and achieve here. Well, it looks like it's probably going to be more practical to go after this guy if we can get him. There we go. Let's go ahead and use our free poison on that guy. He's going to start melting away, which is going to save us a lot of attacks. We want to try to conserve our movement as much as we can, and we'll just do it through that. We want to see if we can maybe disable this one through stun. Parry decided to roll. That's perfectly fine. Anyway, I'll go ahead and see about setting up a stop on you. It would be pretty handy to have him stuck right there, and we're going to block this staircase at the same time. Alright, we've got our meditate, so we'll go ahead and warp you over this direction. And in this particular case, what do we got here? We've got a unit that doesn't need an exorcism up there, so we're just going to go ahead and use this to burst her down a little bit. She's a caster, she's going to be a moderate threat. So we're going to try to melt her down slightly. I'm not sure why the Phoenix is running backwards right now, but oh well. Alright. Yeah, sorry, allergies are being a bit of a dingus right now. Keep stopping for a few seconds because my nose is just bleh. Anyway. So I'm seeing an MP card. That sounds like a great choice for this cockatrice. I'm just going to go ahead and continue pecking away at this bird, see about getting them set up. Usually about half health is where you want to start getting those recruits going, so we'll figure that out as we get there. Anyway, he's got his Gorgon lock. He's going to go ahead and go up here, lock down this area. He's going to see, did I remember to put a glass pumpkin on him or a MP item of some sort? I got a Fruit of the Seraph. You know what? I forgot to use the right item. We're just going to go ahead and burn this. Yeah, you shouldn't be using a Fruit of the Seraph on just a random fight like this, but either way. We're just going to go do something like this. So now we've essentially blocked off multiple units from even getting into the fight, and he's just going to stand right there. And additionally, because he's a target that's up in the front, any units that are in the back row are going to be more likely to target him because it saves them time on their attack. So we'll go ahead and do that, but now these casters are a problem. So he's out of range, he's got his stun, he's going to go and throw this out here. And he's just going to go ahead and attempt to stun them to delete some of their turns, just prevent them from acting, because the best damage is the damage that never got a chance to happen in the first place, you know? So, we want to make sure that we are, again, controlling this area a bit, so we're going to see about doing this whole thing. Again, doing the old MP generation thing. He's going to go for poison bombs in a little bit. Currently, that Phoenix has still not gotten involved in the fight, so seeing as she's got her Envenom rolling, we're going to go over here. We're going to see about just applying this at long range. We're not going to be able to go from there, but we'll go ahead and use a diagonal shot from here. This should be able to reach. So if you didn't know, you can always target. If you're in a 6-square area like this, you'll always be able to skip that second square to fire like this, provided that there isn't a house wall in the way. It's one of the few things that can block it. So there we go. Well, you've got our poison going, so we don't have to worry about attacking those units. So that's actually one of those benefits that gets overlooked a lot. That the poison is not about the DPS, but the fact that you don't actually have to do any additional actions in order for it to function. It is still going to be attacking while you're not attacking, you know? Anyway, so they went ahead and did some attacks, and we're going to go ahead and undo some of those attacks. So there we go. Clerics, again, have a tendency to get panned a whole lot, when in reality they're actually pretty darn fantastic units. So, right here we're going to go in this direction, pick up a match-up card for when it's needed, and we're just going to go ahead and use our cheap poison to start melting these guys over here. Go ahead and throw some poisons out there, and while we could have attempted to charge up to go for a summon later, I'm relying on her meditate in this case, because I would expect it to be a bit more handy in this situation. Anyway, we also want to make sure that this griffin is not flying, so we're going to go over here, and we're going to attempt to shut down this griffin, because Pumpkin Strike is going to come with a leaden effect on there, so let's go ahead and prevent him from taking to the sky. And there we go. So now he's locked down and right in that position, as it were. Additionally, we're going to go ahead and start scooting you over this way. If you're wondering why he's using a book, it's primarily just because it was the cheapest thing that was available for him. It's, you know, it's just a nice, convenient little dealie here. Okay. So, from here, let's go ahead and... do we want to necessarily go for that stun? Maybe not. In this case, he's not necessarily set up for it just yet. We're going to see if there's any chance of a recruit. 3%, whatever. It's ridiculously unlikely to happen, but worth a shot, I suppose. Anyway, Salvation is another thing that's pretty handy for just making sure that stuff always has MP on hand. So, with these guys all as they are, we're going to go and see if we can disable some pieces from the board, namely this one. So, we're going to go ahead and abuse his teleportation and the fact that this area is blocked off to go and get this unit out of the backfield. Those ones on the left we don't necessarily have to worry about, they're just kind of hanging out. And we're just going to leave them stuck there. We're just going to let that problem boil away. We're just going to not let them attack in the first place. Griffins apparently go in that direction. That's perfectly fine. This right here is one of those cases that makes a physical up, crit up Griffin just terrifying. Either way, they are silenced, and we're going to abuse the fact that he's got an elemental finisher right here. Let's go ahead and attempt to just completely take a gigantic chunk off his bar. Anyway, I want to take out that Phoenix, though, so we're going to start moving in this direction. I'm not sure why the Phoenix has not decided to engage just yet. They're feeling pretty neutral, apparently. So either way, we're going to have Honey Nut go in this direction. Probably just going to go attempt to petrify some of those units in the backfield, just in case. Their numbers may be bigger, but it doesn't particularly matter. In fact, I find it particularly funny that that mentality is something that got made fun of back in the SNES version. Because there is a guy, pretty much immediately when you, the guy that's in the background behind Brezin at the very start of the game, that comes out and says, no, their swords are bigger than ours, we clearly can't win, and just immediately gets killed on sight at that point. Anyway, so let's go ahead and continue on. Now, that was a bit of an unfortunate situation with that Lich, but that's perfectly fine. So, we're going to go ahead and continue on forward here. We're going to go ahead and use our top-offs here. I probably could have gone a little bit more left on that one, but oh well. So we'll have her move a few steps forward to start moving towards one of those two skill cards if she happens to get there. And, as we see, they're just going to be retreating. They're going to be, well, mostly stuck behind other things, as it were. Alright, so she's got her Envenom rolling. So, despite the fact that they got rid of their Envenom, we're going to see about turning on that Envenom right again immediately. Unfortunately, one tile at range, but you know what? That's perfectly fine. We can start melting this guy instead. There we go. Pop, and now he's poisoned. So, personally, I like using a blowgun for this, but pretty much any ranged attack will do just fine, just so you're aware. Alright, so... particular case, we're going to go over here to turn on her hyper armor skills, and this is one of those cases that I will want to go ahead and charge up, just because everything's already pretty much poisoned, so we're pretty much good to go there. Pick up another MP generation card on Honey Nut, and now they will proceed to go on a bit of a tear here with Petra Breath. because I want to go and recruit, or not recruit, but I want to kill off that neutral griffin. So we'll go ahead and deal with that. Additionally, these guys are looking like they want a little bit more health, so we're going to go ahead and top off these guys. Probably could have set him up for a little bit of a heal too. 65 doesn't seem like much, but it can be much. Anyway, again, only hit point that matters is the last one, so if you can add anything extra to that, it can be potentially very handy. He's going to go ahead and broaden force, he's going to gorge and lock, he's going to go and punch something, like this ghost right here, and he's going to go ahead and put a rampart shadow in this direction now, blocking off even more area, holding this entire zone for himself. He technically could have gone backwards and blocked even more area back there, but I'm perfectly fine with him being right there. So that'll be that. Anyway, we'll go ahead and use our free resurrection here to go give our Lich a free turn, and this is why losing units doesn't necessarily matter too much, because we're going to abuse skill cards and conserve MP right here to keep getting free resurrections, which means faster turns, which means multiple turns, which means that we just get to keep on acting and acting and acting and acting. Anyway, this is another unit that does not need an exorcism, so we're just going to go ahead and start battering that. They're not currently a threat of any kind, but we'll just, start throwing damage out there. It's okay if he gets knocked out. He's a nice, tempting target. And we'll just go ahead and resurrect him and end up getting another free turn out of that. Just keep on abusing these things. Okay, so in this case, we've got our Tamer coming up, down in that direction. He's going to attempt to recruit this Griffin. I forget in the case of Griffins if silence prevents them from being recruited, but if it does, that's a shame. Anyway, we'll now go in this direction, and we will start doing some more melting, in this case on these two. There we go, take our guaranteed poison to drop it in that direction. So we've got one guy poisoned on the bottom, we've got one ghost poisoned on the top, and we continue on. Alright, so are you... There, let's go ahead and fire on something. Like right here, he's going to go use this to attempt to generate the MP needed. He's going to get just enough to make that subdue happen. He's going to roll that 30%, see if we can get ourselves a free unit. There we go, fantastic. And now they'll go ahead and do their attacks wherever they happen to be. High health units are great to put around drain health units, because that damage usually won't be enough to be a legitimate threat to them. Dang it, I'm running a little short on time here, but whatever, we'll deal as we'll deal. I'll add as much as I can into the video here. He's got his concentration at this point, and if he... So, he doesn't have the MP at the moment, but just to kind of bear this in mind, you may have seen that he's running Charm, and if you have units that are particularly good at landing debuffs, obviously talents are going to be going in different directions, but if that happens to be the case, where you've got somebody that's particularly good at debuffs, like I've got a Necromancer and I've got Rudlum that are really that rolled really good mind, in their case, you may notice that Charm is going to be a great way to shut off attacks before they ever even happen. So you can simply, like, let's say you see a unit that's just about to take a turn, and it doesn't matter that they're not the most optimal target. You're preventing the unit that's about to attack from, attacking. You're taking away their movement utility, so to speak. Okay, so now that guy decided to finally join the fight, ages later. We got our wind shot over here. Let's see. Now, there's a crit card up here. That could be handy. So we're going to go ahead and take this crit, and let's go ahead and apply it like so. So he shouldn't be... I forget if this actually causes him to hit himself, but it will potentially cause a decent amount of numbers in this direction, which is just going to be fun to watch. So let's go ahead and do that. And so there we go. So he's going to go ahead and self-destruct. Perfectly fine. Anyway, worth at least a test there, So he's going to go ahead and Petra Breath in this direction, petrify them two, pick up his crit card. So those two are out of the fight entirely. They're just going to sit there. And an interesting note, if you petrify units on top of swamp tiles, they will still continue taking the poison from that. So at this point, we can continue working on these units right here. We see that if we do this, we can guarantee that the ghost will get taken out, and we'll do a few pecks on the Phoenix, see if we can get that loot drop. We've got our Broadened Force guy doing his Broadened Force thing. There we go, just punch this dude. Why not? He is doing his job. We'll probably attempt to ground that Griffin, I think. We're not going to have enough... Actually, we totally do have enough range for this. Okay, whatever. You stay. Okay, didn't roll the lead. Darn it. Would have been nice if it did. That would have been pretty snazzy. All the same, she is going to see about getting a shot from here. That's probably going to be out of range. Yeah, just out of range. Oh well, that's fine. We go in this direction then. Let's see, we can drop some numbers on this guy with our free casts, and we'll continue on. Her intelligence is not crazy high or anything, she is just taking advantage of an elemental advantage, and there we go. So, Lich goes down again, and he resurrects again in just a moment. Oh, he actually didn't roll it that time. Oh well, we'll go ahead and pick up this actually, he doesn't need the crit, what am I doing? I need to pick up a skill on him, but because he's running Phalanx and everything else, again, he can basically just be the ultimate sport in this situation. The important part is just to always, always want to run your backup plans. Always have something else in mind to go deal with the problem at hand. Alright, so he's going to act pretty soon here. Go ahead and wait on you. They've gotten some units through, just because that one Valkyrie ended up getting knocked down. Alright. He went and self-destructed his own unit, and one of our attacks was completely free there, so that's always fun. Anyway, we can go ahead and have Honey Nut start working on this guy, try to knock him down onto the ground. And in this case, you go this way. See about attacking this one. Just go ahead and let's see. That's not going to do much of anything, but we have an Ice Prison, which is going to be extra effective versus this guy. And so there we go. Ice on Air. Nice big wacky hit on you. You know, you totally need to grind these units. This dude joined the party like friggin' 5 minutes ago. Anyway, so let's see. Is that gonna be? If we do something like that, that might be handy. There we go. Let's get those guys back up, and then we'll get our Lich back up, and then we'll have Starfall, which will clear out that ghost, and then we continue on from there. Your Earth attacking on that one. They're currently a bit reasonably defended. Either way, right now, let's see. Let's go ahead and move you over here. He's probably going to take a pretty big meaty punch on you. It's not as meaty as would be ideal, but we can just sort of hold them in place. Alright. So, from here, what do we want to do with you? I mean, he's definitely going to want some MP and such, but we're going to go ahead and roll for the stun here. See if we can get that. The stun did not roll, but that's fine. You move in this direction. He will be switching over to mostly a punishing role in just a moment, where he's going to be attempting to switch out for basically for just using elementals or using summons and things. Either way, let's see. Poison odds are going to be 30 on you because they're going to be at least 30. We can also work on this one, or we can work in this direction, which I'm thinking getting her out of the way might be more useful right now. So we'll just go ahead and apply that. There we are. Because even if we roll full crits, it's not going to be enough to deal with these two. So if we want those pieces off the board, we're going to have to do it other ways. Alright. Go ahead and punch that dude as you do. And as soon as Denim acts, we're going to be going from there. Let's see, next unit that's going to be acting is going to be this Golem. So, let's see if there's going to be enough to finish him off. Almost. Can he pick up a crit card anywhere? Not currently. However, if he... I mean, it might be worth doing anyway. I might just finish him off with a thing later, but I'm thinking it might be more useful to attempt to mind control the guy instead. There we go. We got the Charm. And so now he'll hopefully attack our friend over there. Alright, they get the Raven Eye. And I'm going to go over here and attempt to... Do you have poison? Yes, you do. So we'll go ahead and re-poison the guy. Sounds good to me. Let's see, and we still have our Golem down there, so probably what we want to do is have him walk down and attempt to recruit the Golem later. We'll just go ahead and resurrect our Lich for the time being to clear out some of these undead units. And so we'll go ahead and do that. We'll have you move over in this direction right here. And currently we won't be able to because he's charmed, but once we get a little bit closer, we'll be able to get that Golem on our team. So, what we're going to want to do is he's going to basically resist that. He's going to take a hit from it. So, simply put, we move over in this direction, we pick up our crit card, we go ahead and use our Starfall to make sure that we're doing a little bit of damage and getting rid of another unit at the same time. So he went and landed a crit there, and that's one ghost permanently gone. And next up, let's see if we can probably just whop this guy, maybe. Okay, just go over here, do the whop. There we are. If we had any water finishers, like from a whip or something, that would hit this guy particularly hard, but we don't really have many of those on hand, so not gonna be too beneficial for us. Anyway, let's move the chicken over probably in this direction. Just kind of peck away at this guy a little bit. Get him a little bit lower. Just kind of while we're here, I suppose. And he's going to go ahead and attack Mr. Rudlum. That is okay. Shoot, I am very much out of time here. Okay, yeah, I think I might have to call it there. Let's go ahead and show off a couple of other things, and then I have to wrap it up for now. Okay, so, anyway. Bird comes back. Lizard comes back. Everybody comes back. More exorcism, you know, deal with Bird as it comes. They're not actually a threat. You get the idea. You just keep applying more and more of these little moments, and you get more and more in return, right? You take away their threats, make them your own. I'm pretty sure you get the idea. I'm assuming you kind of see, kind of picking up what I'm putting down here, you know? So, that will have to be about that for today, because I'm out of time, and I really gotta get going. So, thank you all for stopping by, and yeah, hope this helps. So, y'all take care. I'll see you then.